Hey there, it's Theta again. In this very short video, I'm going to walk you through some settings and loadouts for anybody who's brand new to the game. This will save you some pain, and I had to learn most of this stuff the hard way. Hopefully this will help you out. So first of all, go to your settings window, and the settings that are most important, at least for our purposes, are over here on the right. Number one is syringe use. Put that to no input if it's anything different. All this means is that you can either use a syringe on yourself or somebody else without having to press anything. I'm a little surprised there's even a setting in the game. There's really no reason to make it trigger only, but whatever. The other one, which is not by default in most cases, is knife damage, and you want this to be require input. The reason you want this to be require input is if it's on its default setting of no input, then if you're holding your knife and you accidentally tap somebody with it on your team, for example, then you'll kill them, because knife is instant kill if you can make contact with somebody. And most people have to go through the experience of figuring this one out because they'll be fumbling around through somebody's gear when they're down trying to res them, and instead they'll pick up the knife and accidentally kill them. I've done this a few times, and then I just got wise and changed this setting. The grip, that should be default. And then the other one that's really important is the outer edge on sprint control, because by default it is at single or double. I believe it's single, I don't remember. But what this makes a difference for is when you're sprinting, you don't have to click. I don't know if you can hear that sound through my mic, but you don't have to click any of your thumbsticks in order to sprint. And by not having to click the thumbstick for a sprint, then you are saving your hardware some wear and tear that you don't need. I actually started having problems on my touch controllers because I didn't have this setting in, and I didn't figure this one out until a long ways into playing Onward. Hopefully I can save you some wear and tear. Just set this to outer edge from the very beginning. Some more optional ideas are, for example, the watch position. The right bottom is not default, but what this means is that the right hand will have a watch underneath the wrist. And the reason I personally prefer that is if you're holding the weapon and you want to check the time, which is pretty important in Onward, if you're using the default setup, which I believe is left-handed if you're right-hand dominant, it'll be left top. You have to actually ungrip your weapon and do this. And in certain situations, that can put you in a bad spot. Whereas if you have it on right bottom, you can just kind of like rotate your weapon a little bit, or just pop it up through your field of view, and suddenly you've got the clock right in front of you. Let's see, anything else here? Yeah, holster type. That's one that people like to play around with. I personally prefer to have the hip holster, which means that I have to look down and grab at my hip to get my pistol. A lot of people like to have it on their chest. I would just say play with that one, see which one you like. And the other ones are really more for preference than anything. Obviously, set your player height correctly. It's possible to cheat like this. A lot of people will set their player height below what they actually are. I am actually 5'10" in real life, so that's the setting I put here. But if you put a lower setting, then there's a potential, for reasons I won't really go into here, it doesn't really matter. You can run faster, and you are much harder to hit. So don't set anything below, especially on this. If anything, if you want to be on the safe side, maybe set it a little bit higher if you're not sure. And radio position, that's dependent on whether you're right or left hand dominant. I personally prefer to have the radio on the left, and that just means that if you want to use the radio, you reach over to your left shoulder and press the trigger button, and that will activate your radio, which you need to communicate. That's the way it should be set up. And these other settings I won't really bother with because it's more up to your personal preference. Although gun stock mode, I would say don't use that unless you actually have a gun stock, otherwise it'll just be really challenging. Okay, with that in mind, I'm going to switch over to loadouts now. This is the tent. This is where you pick your loadouts. And I'm just going to go through each one of these in turn, just to kind of tell you which weapons are worth using, with the exception of marksman. Maybe I'll talk a little bit about that. I never use marksman. I don't think I've ever used marksman for anything other than just dicking around in shooting range. But anyway, I do want to say before I talk about any of these, the overall strategy for picking loadouts is you should just pick one class for both sides and stick with that and one type of loadout, and you'll understand what that means in a moment, for the foreseeable future. It's kind of the mark of the newbie. I've even got a little joke going about what I call the noob process, or the noob cycle, I should say, where somebody goes through this process where they need to try out every weapon. That's normal. People are curious. They want to see what's going on with a new game. But there are specific weapons in this game that work best and give you your best return on investment, so to speak, on the points that can be invested in every weapon. And those are the weapons you should be sticking with. And those are the only weapons you're really going to see in competition anyway, with a few minor exceptions. So if you're planning on playing in the league, if you really want to get good at this game, your best bet is to not dick around with a bunch of different weapons and a bunch of different classes. Maybe experiment a little bit at the beginning just to kind of figure out what you're most comfortable with, and then just pick one or two guns that you're going to get really, really good at. That'll help you figure out all the muscle memory you need, reaction time, map knowledge, all that, without having to dick around with the weapon and try and figure out fire modes and all this other stuff that comes with using weapons you're not familiar with. Once you've reached a certain level of competence with any loadout, you can always switch it out later. But I would say, especially for a beginner, it's best to not spend too much time on that. Just pick the weapons that are already known to be good, and later on, when you've developed skills in the rest of your game, so to speak, then you can kind of play around and pick which other weapons you want to experiment with. Okay, so for Rifleman, my personal preference is the AK-5C. This is what you will see most people in the league, including at the highest level, they will use the AK-5C. The other viable option, this is the AK-5C, by the way. The other viable option is, let's see, some people use the Mark 16. It's 2 points. You'll see there's points here. There's a point balance next to the confirm button. But the extra points, I think, in my mind, are not really justified. Some people use the M16A4 as well, which is also just 1 point. Pretty much nobody uses the AUG or the M39, at least not in the Rifleman class. I would not bother, especially the AUG having the +3. It's just not a good return on your investment. And the standard attachments, and this is true pretty much across the board. I'm trying to think if there are any classes where this is not the case. Yeah, pretty much exclusively, I should say, pretty much across the board globally, you want to have a foregrip. You can see here, so if I remove the foregrip, it's not showing up right now. Normally, anyway, it doesn't matter. Usually the stats, oh, here it is. I'm sorry, I was just missing it. So recoil, as you can see with the foregrip, is, I think that's halved, if I'm telling those proportions correctly. But either way, it makes the guns that have foregrips a million times easier to control. And especially if you're going to use some of the other classes, namely support, which has light machine guns, then foregrips are critical. In general, you just won't see anybody not using foregrips in the league. I've seen maybe 1 or 2 people and get away with it. They're usually not the top players. The top teams, everybody's got a foregrip on every weapon. That's just how it works. Next is the sight. Really, the only 2 viable options are the holographic sight and the red dot sight. I don't personally like the red dot sight, but I know a lot of people that swear by it, so don't just take my opinion. The OEG, I personally can't stand. Again, some people enjoy that sight. I don't know why. Then you'll see that there's some options like this 2x, which is just, basically a holographic sight with a magnifier in front of it for an extra point. The 4X, and both on Volk and Marsoc, is usually not a great sight. It's just got issues, at least in this version of Onward. And then these angled sights, as you can see, as the name implies, they are angled off. And those are used with sniper weapons in most cases. So if you have like a 12x or something in a marksman class, you use those. I don't even really know why they're part of Rifleman. They're not particularly good sights. They're pretty hard to use. Sometimes I just stick around with them for fun, but in general, don't use them. So holographic sight or red dot, pretty much across the board, unless you're talking about marksman. But just make sure you have a sight. If you have iron sights and that worked out for you in PvE or whatever, you're going to get smoked. So don't use those. What else? Full metal jacket. Don't take tracers or APs. APs are only good for penetrating body armor. Other than that, they make no difference, and they reduce your magazine count down to 2. So don't use them. Full Metal Jacket, 2-3 rounds is usually enough to kill somebody anyway. AP is just a distraction. Some people use them in the league. I will say even some high-level people seem to swear by them. I personally don't understand that thinking. I think it's just more like personal preferences and some misconceptions, frankly. But I would just say, especially as a beginner, don't use the AP rounds. Tracers will give you away, making them not only useless but dangerous. Don't use them. It's incredibly easy to spot out somebody, especially on a large map like, say, Downfall or something, where people are hanging out in little nooks and crannies. You're not sure where the shots are coming from. And the moment they start firing tracer rounds, you can pinpoint their position and take them out. You don't want to be that person. So stick with Full Metal Jacket on all your loadouts. Again, this is all just based on the idea that you're a beginner. Once you get more advanced, you can do whatever you want. I always bring body armor, and the reason for that is we've done some testing and found that it makes a big difference in terms of survivability. You're much more likely to just be downed than killed when you're using body armor. But as you can see, body armor only covers your chest area, or torso, I should say. So if you get shot in the head, even with body armor, it's not going to help you. Get shot in the legs, arms, not going to help you. I bring body armor pretty much every round. That's my personal preference. Some people don't like those extra points and they don't think it makes that much of a difference. I disagree. Again, I would say as a beginner, just take the body armor. And you'll see here I've got night vision on this loadout. I'm going to just back out for a second. So you can see there's 2 loadouts you can have for every class. And the way that I personally structure this, and I suggest you do the same, is loadout 1 is a loadout with night vision to deal with night maps. You can change these around however you want, but always keeping this in mind. So loadout 1 is night vision / night map loadout. And then the other one is the day map loadout. So I'll go back in here. I've got night vision on this one. And in the night vision loadouts, I will only have one piece of utility, in this case, 1 red smoke grenade. And if you're curious about pistols, always stick with the default pistol. You are almost never going to use pistols. The only people who care much about pistols are shield players, and you should not be playing with the shield at the beginning. That is an advanced loadout to use, and just get used to using rifles and whatnot for the moment. Don't worry about pistols. Just stick with the pistol. Don't put any attachments on it. Don't do anything fancy to it. It's a total waste of points. Pistols are close to useless, again, unless you have a shield. So if I go into my daytime loadout, you'll see I've got 2 pieces of utility. And another way you could work this around is, instead of taking these non-lethal pieces of utility, which were smoke and flash, I can take a single frag grenade instead, and I still have my body armor and a frag grenade to go with that. So since I personally prefer to have the flash and the smoke, so I can conceal myself or flash people as needed, that's what I do. Okay. So for specialist, I have some meme loadouts here. Do not do this. So we're just going to build a loadout here. Let's see. So the Mark 18 is the strongest MARSOC weapon. I would not bring suppressors really ever. I was just having fun with this. Sometimes we like to dick around in pub lobbies and bring MP5s with suppressors. Don't do that though. It's a really bad idea. Suppressors in general don't do much for you. Sometimes there's a slight benefit on night maps because they will hide your muzzle flash, but they're still really loud. They don't hide you from an auditory perspective, and that makes them mostly worthless, excuse me. And if you are on a nighttime map, then it can be useful to conceal the muzzle flash because then they can't pinpoint you as easily. Just don't expect a silencer to ever conceal your position from a purely auditory perspective. As you'll see, I put a foregrip on this as well. Full Metal Jacket, holographic sight, same thing. So this has a night vision and a day loadout. See if there's any other. Yeah, the Mark 18 is really the only viable weapon. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about why the rest of these are terrible. The ballistic shield is a weapon. It's not even really a weapon, so to speak. It's just a way to defend yourself, but that's a whole different metagame you don't even have to worry about right now. You should worry about learning how to kill people with ballistic shields, not how to use them right out of the gate. Once you figure that out, you can start developing a shield game for yourself if you want. The rest of these guns, though, just ignore them, especially the shotgun. Shotguns are awful, and I do not recommend anybody uses them. Support class. This is my preferred class. I like the M249. I like having 200 rounds. It's a great weapon for suppressing. It's a great weapon for creating audio cover. You can just sit there and unload on a position and people can move up. They won't be able to hear anything because the M249 is so loud. And it's easy to suppress people because you can just sit there and spray down an entire building, and that will suppress anybody that's inside. So it plays the quote-unquote support role very well. The other viable option that you can take here, yeah, I would actually say all three of these. It's really the only class that has every weapon as a viable choice. So here we have the LA6A2, also known as the SA80. This has a drum magazine, as you can see, and this drum magazine will fit in any M16-like weapon, including the AK-5C and the the Mark 16, whatever that other one on Rifleman is with the tan body. So this is a really useful weapon to have. You can pull this out, and this will give 100 rounds to anybody who you give a drum magazine to. So a good strategy a lot of teams utilize is they'll bring one of these support weapons, and you get 3 of these. So you come with 1 drum magazine for yourself, plus 2 you can give out, and then that support person gives out both of their drums in exchange for regular magazines from the people that they gave the drums to. And now you have 3 people with at least one 100 round magazine. The benefit for using this, the M16A4 is just kind of a standard weapon, but when you take it as a support class, you can see you get 7 magazines. So you don't get anything special with the weapon itself, but you do get 7 magazines, so you can start handing out magazines to people, or you can just be a one-man wrecking crew and shoot a ton of bullets. I just set this back. Okay, and then for marksman, the only good options I know of, I really don't play this. Like I said, the M16 is okay. I know people who use this. The M39 is another great choice. A lot of people use this. They'll put suppressors on it. In this case, suppressors make sense because snipers need to have any concealment they can get, including muzzle flash. In that case, I would say just use that. It does make the weapon look a bit longer. You can be more easily spotted because of that, but all the best snipers I know use silence versions of their sniper rifles. And the Mark 17, I don't really see anybody use this. And bolt action sniper rifles are just trash for the most part. Do not use bolt action sniper rifles in general. They're just not good weapons. Just going to make sure this has a foregrip on it. And don't use bipods. This is true for support too. They do nothing for you. If you have a foregrip, you have more than enough stability. Don't waste your points on a bipod. It's just useless, particularly on the marksman class. I'm just going to jump into support real quick and show you what I was talking about with the watch. I'm just going to load this real quick because that's habit. So as you can see, I was talking about before with the watch position. So if you have the default watch position, that would mean, let's say, yeah, I'm firing and then I need to figure out what time it is. That would mean I'd have to ungrip my weapon and do this. Now, it doesn't seem like a big deal, but in the middle of a big firefight in the game of Onward, it can really get you killed. So instead, you can just put your weapon up and then just make a slight adjustment. Look, okay. And that's what time it is right now because I'm in shooting range. It's not showing me the actual time. So, oh, my tracking's going a little bonkers right now. But anyway, just wanted to show you that. And also make a point that if you're in a lobby, oh, my tracking is really losing it right now. Hold on, I'm going to pause this for just a moment so I can recover. All right, just to spare you all the technical details, just didn't want to deal with my tracking flipping out again. So I just wanted to bring up a point about etiquette with loadouts. A lot of people don't understand this, especially when they first get in, but you can go into a shooting range like what I'm in right now and get your loadout squared away. Do not make other people wait for you to build your loadout. It's also worth bringing up that your loadouts get saved every time you use them, so you should never have to keep rebuilding. And this is part of the reason I tell people just pick 1 or 2 weapons, stick with those for a long time so that you can just ready up in a couple of seconds. Like when I'm in a lobby, the moment I'm on a team, done, and I'm in the game. And now you can go out and play Onward. All right, and now we're going to just do a quick review of Volk weapons. You already know the basics now, so this one should go a lot faster. In Rifleman, the AK-12 is sort of the de facto best choice here. Don't really see other people using other weapons. It's only 1 point. It's incredibly accurate and deadly, again, using a foregrip, although the Volk foregrips tend to look a little weird. The cool benefit of this one, too, is that you get a see-through magazine. So you can actually keep close tabs on how many rounds you have left, which you don't really get a benefit of on Marsoc. I can't think of any weapons that do that. Sure, I'm missing one. Just trying to think in the moment. Anyway, some people like to use the AKM. I personally hate this weapon. As you can see, there is no foregrip available. It's not even possible. Oh yeah, by the way, I'm glad this came up. Never use lasers or flashlights. I shouldn't say never on the flashlight. Some people like to use those in night maps, and they're very good for blinding people. So sometimes flashlights are appropriate, but laser sights, aside from the shield players that are using them to help aim pistols over a shield or to the side of a shield, there is just no reason to bring a laser sight. A lot of people come from PvE and put laser sights on their weapons because that's what they're used to using against bots. But that's a terrible idea when you're playing against real people because all you're doing is giving your position away. And as you can see here, same type of setup that I have on Marsoc in the sense that I have body armor and I have, let's just go back here, I have a night vision and a day loadout. For specialists, there's a couple of options. Don't, for the love of God, do not use the AS-Val. This was another just meme loadout that my friends and I were using to play around on a server. The viable option in this case is the G36. It has that same feature as the AK-12 in that you can look in the magazine as you're using it and count your rounds, which is pretty cool. I put a foregrip on that. And I do want to say there is a special place in hell for you if you use RPGs on any sort of regular basis. This seems to be the newbie weapon of choice. Do not be that guy. Don't go into a lobby and start launching RPGs. If you go into a comp lobby and do that, they'll kick you. There's a lot of stuff you can do that'll get you kicked, but that will really piss off a lot of people if you do that. Some people like to use the TAR-21. I'll say in fact, some pretty good people like to use the TAR-21. If you want to try playing around with that, you can. I wouldn't recommend it. It's awkward. It has this bullpup setup, and the people that are good with it didn't start using it until pretty late in their Onward careers, from what I've seen. Just stick with the G36 for now. It's an excellent weapon. I'm just going to make sure this is squared away in case I use this. I use the hollows. Again, some people don't like the hollows. They prefer red dots, whatever one. I would say play with that and figure out which one you like. That's in general. Just use the G36. And I'm just going to fix this real quick because I do not want to find myself using a Val ever again. That weapon is absolute garbage. Okay. In here. Okay. Support. PKM is my support weapon of choice. There is the choice of the G3A3 though. The difference with this one as opposed to the SA80 on Marsoc is that this drum mag does go in one other weapon. It goes in the G3. Nobody uses the G3 unless they're on support. Some people do use this setup. This is, I wouldn't even say it's uncommon. A lot of people use the G3A3 on support because it has this, and it's a little more accurate than the PKM. So some people like that, but you can't share the magazine, so that benefit's gone. And you just don't have as many rounds because you have 100 instead of, how many is the PKM? So the PKM has 250, so you're losing 150 rounds on this for some trade in accuracy. I don't like that trade-off, but some people are fine with it. You can't share this in most cases because people don't bring the G3 on Rifleman, and that's the only other weapon you could share this with. If somebody brought the support version of G3A3, there's no reason to share with them because they already have this. Therefore, the benefit that you would get from the SA-80, for example, where you can share your magazines with your teammates and become a sort of force multiplier, that goes away. So PKM is my favorite, and let me just say the AKM, I've already gone over that. Terrible weapon. You do get more magazines, just like on Marsoc. If you pick it as support, it's not worth it. Don't take it. And on Marksman, the SKS is the de facto default for most people. Some people, I've seen the SVD get used, but no one uses the bolt action rifle that I know of. Nobody that's good at it. Wow, I must have been playing around with this one too. So this is the setup that you see in most cases for support, is the SKS with it 12 times, and usually a suppressor too, as I've mentioned before. All right, well, that's all I've got for now. Hopefully this is helpful. As I mentioned before, just pick, one loadout per side, whatever class that is that you feel most comfortable. You're gonna have to kind of float around and figure out which one is best for you. I would recommend not going with Marksman early on. It's a very challenging class to play and requires solid fundamentals in order for you to really take advantage of it. So pick one of Rifleman, Specialist, or Support. Get really good at the loadout that you want for each side. So, on Rifleman, let's say AK-5C, and then, on Marsoc, AK-5C, and then on Volk, an AK-12, Specialist, Mark 18, or the G36, and Support, the PKM, the M249. Just go through those loadouts, and just get really good at them. Get used to those weapons, get used to the sight pictures, do everything you need to do to become competent with those, and just stick with them for a while. And also, once again, just load out, ready up quickly. Get into a lobby, pick that loadout you've already figured out, press confirm, and get ready to play. If you don't have that squared away already, just go into the firing range and take care of that. All right, I'm not going to take any more time. That's all I've got. This is Theta, the Monotone Messiah, aka your friendly neighborhood nihilist, and I am done for today. Enjoy this video.